coming at you from Jersey. Who's asking? It's the Turnpike Throw Down on All Noise Radio. Your hosts, Jeffrey Costello, representing South Jersey and the Philadelphia region. And in the north, you got Jimmy Flippin, representing New York City and all that comes with it. Suburbs, we got them covered. And the two cities on opposite ends of 95, well, they're just going to have to face off and get along. It's the Turnpike Throw Down, All Noise Radio, powered by the Connecticut School of Broadcasting. Starting now.
What's up, everybody? It is Turnpike Throwdown. James Flippin,
Jeff Costello.
We got a great show for you today. One of my favorite websites, to be honest with you, Jeff, the first website I log into every morning other than my email is MetsBlog.com. As a diehard Mets fan, you got to go to MetsBlog.com. You've seen him on SNY. Owner and creator of MetsBlog, Matthew Cerrone, coming up in just a minute. And, of course, we've got a great show. Other than that, Bryant Aquino, the Flippin' Out Radio NBA correspondent, will be joining us for some Sixers talk. We got to get into the Miami Heat. What is it? People are crying already, Jeff.
Absolutely. It's ridiculous. I think Tommy Conway, our producer, is trying to get Matthew on the line right now. Is he up, Tommy? Almost? All right. Tommy will give us a cue. But you know what? It's a MetsBlog.com. I love the guy even as a Phillies fan. You know, I'm going to let you kind of drive the interview, obviously, because, it's Mets talk.
You know, it is going to be some Mets talk. And, of course, after that, we will get Exit 6.
I want to get a question or two in about the Phils, but nothing too crazy.
All right, and we're joined on the phone now by Matt Cerrone of Mets Blog, owner and creator of Mets Blog, as well as a member of the SNY network. Matt, thanks so much for joining us on Turnpike Throwdown.
You got it, guys.
Matt, obviously with the news coming out today about Carlos Beltran, wasn't going to play in the game today. Originally, it was thought he was going to designated hit, avoid the field for a while, and that knee is kind of coming back to health at this point. Were you in any way surprised when you heard the news that he wasn't going to be playing in the game today?
I mean, I guess I wasn't surprised, just because how can you ever be surprised when it comes to injuries with the Mets? Particularly Beltran, and I'm a huge Beltran fan. I think he's in some ways underrated during his time here in New York. But when it comes to these sorts of things, I don't think anything can be surprising.
Yeah, I mean, I kind of felt the same way, especially when I heard that he was crushing the ball in batting practice. It was almost like waiting for the next foot to drop. I guess as a Mets fan, you kind of get to expect these health issues eventually cropping up. But with Beltran especially, I feel like a lot of people had expectations that maybe this year he would come back somewhat healthy, made the decision early on to move to right field. Did you, when you heard that news so early on about moving away from center field, immediately feel nervous that was related to health, or did you not think of it at the time?
Honest to God, I didn't even think of it. I mean, I think to a certain extent there was a correlation in that, had he thought he could compete for that position and win it out, I mean, basically, if he thought he could play center field, he was going to go for it. So the fact that he chose to move
so quickly move to right, yeah.
Obviously that would have been a tip-off. But to me, I didn't think of it as, there must be something wrong with him, and that's why he's doing it. I just figured he was being cautious, figuring I got to go slow with my rehab here. It's not going to be fair to the team and to Pagan and to Terry Collins and to himself to sort of drag this out. Let's just make a decision and move on with it. And that's sort of the way I looked at it. But, I guess it kind of makes sense at this point that, that might have been the case. But, frankly, in talking to people over there, it comes across like this is sort of a new thing. He DH'd, that first game, ran the bases a little bit, slid into home, felt fine that evening, and then it was the next day that actually that he started to experience a little pain there. And so, I mean, I'm not even sure that you can make the direct connection between the decision a couple weeks ago and this knee thing, although, it's kind of understandable that we would think that.
In hindsight, yeah. But no, you make a good point in that there was probably something in addition to just the general soreness or tendonitis. And now I heard that it's actually his left knee, not his right knee, which was surgically repaired last year. Any truth to that, or can you kind of comment on that? I don't even know what to say anymore. It's some knee. It's something, right? Doesn't even matter. I don't know.
Well, yes, it's one of the two. But, basically he said it. Terry Collins said it, and Sandy Alderson all said it before the game on Tuesday. And, he said basically that he's been overcompensating with the left knee. It was the right knee that he had surgery done about a year and a half ago. And it's not really uncommon, from talking to people there and just other players over the years. I mean, it tends to be the case. They come back from a particularly knee, type of a surgery. And when they get back into camp and they're kind of pushing it to get strong, they're kind of favoring the surgically repaired, body part, and so they compensate. So it's not completely, unrealistic that this would happen. They're describing it as tendonitis. Some have said arthritis. I mean, the reality is Beltran has knee issues. Everybody knows that. That's not news. And so that's why, to me, it's a little alarming. It's worrisome, and you can't help it. I mean, every long-term injury with Beltran, to me, seems like it starts this way. Frankly, every injury with this team seems to start this way, where, don't worry about it, look the other way, it's not a big deal, it's just a few days. Next thing you know, it's 6 months later, we're all hoping and praying and wondering what life will be like when everybody's healthy again. And this just feels, yet again, like the tip of the iceberg, and even though they're saying that it isn't, as a fan, I can't help but feel that way.
Well, we're speaking with Matt Cerrone of Mets Blog. This is Jeff. Looking at it from a Philly point of view, I can obviously say that, honestly, Matt, I'm not even enjoying any of this anymore. 2007, stuff like that. I actually saw that you had written an article tonight about, the feelings of the 2007 collapse and things that had happened. It comes to a point where you just got to say, all right, enough is enough. You want, your opponent to get up off the mat and stuff like that. You've got Carlos Beltran, who's going through these, ailments, and it's good that the Mets medical staff actually narrowed it down to one of his two knees. But speaking of a player that, was going to be in a contract year and you really kind of expected, I at least thought, he was going to come out and just mashing. And, it's a long ways away to say that he's not. But speaking of another player in a contract year, what are your feelings on where Jose Reyes is going to end up? And do you think that he'll finish the season as a Met?
I'll answer the question about Reyes, but just to take a step back about Beltran. He did, in the time that I saw him in the cage and working out during the workouts the first couple of weeks of spring training, he looked great in the batting cage. He looked different at the plate. He was hitting the ball well. He looked stronger and definitely in better shape. The word was that he really, worked hard to lose some weight and strengthen the muscles around his knee, to put himself in a better position here. So that's what kind of makes this whole thing a little awkward, is that he looked terrific, and he was hitting the ball great. And so then to have this happen is kind of discouraging. But to answer your question about Reyes, as a fan, I don't want him going anywhere. I love watching Jose Reyes play. He and Josh Tolley are probably my favorite players on the team. And so, I don't want him going anyplace. But, you look at Sandy Alderson and you look at their emphasis on base percentage, and you look at Reyes' on base percentage, and you look at how, this front office kind of, dismisses stolen bases, and you think about Jose Reyes and what his game is based on, and you start to see the disconnect. Furthermore, I heard Alderson talk, I think during his press conference, about how, he just doesn't believe in, as a principle, as a philosophy, basically giving out long-term secondary contracts, which is exactly what Reyes will be looking for. And then you compound that with whatever the team's financial situation is. All signs point to Reyes not being here next year. I don't think that that's written in stone. I think that could change. But you look at all those things, and it's really kind of a big hurdle to jump. And so that begs the question this summer, if the team is winning or losing, regardless, if they're in a position where they determine that they don't have any interest in re-signing Jose Reyes, well then, maybe you do trade him. Even if they're doing well, maybe it makes sense to move him. I don't want to see that happen. But when I look at all those things, like I mentioned at the start of this answer, it makes me wonder if that's sort of where they're going to be this summer, and definitely, 6 or 7 months from now.
Yeah, I think it's a tough question. Again, we're talking with Matt Cerrone of Mets Blog and the SNY Network. Matt, it is tough because Reyes is kind of an enigmatic player in and of himself. You mentioned the on-base percentage. Obviously, he's had his own health issues in the past. Certainly a dynamic player when healthy, plays a great defensive shortstop, has some pop. The speed in and of itself, not just the stolen bases, makes an impact. Do you see a path where maybe with ownership change, the whole issue of keeping Reyes under a long-term contract in spite of the fact that Alderson has said, my preference is this and that when it comes to certain contract situations, do you think that an ownership situation could stave off that problem of having to get rid of Reyes in a salary dump type move? And do you think that would be right for the team, in your own personal opinion, considering the fact that you could trade him for a haul of prospects? And have you heard anything about ownership changes at this point?
Well, all anybody's talked about is this minority investment position, which, frankly, I've talked to enough people in the financial community in New York who all say, Madoff or no Madoff, the Wilpons should take some money off the table. It's foolish to own 99% of a baseball team. Mm-hmm. You look at the Steinbrenners; they own 30% of the Yankees. I think the principal investment for the Wilpons probably had to be around $150 million for this team. It was valued around $700-800 million a few years ago, and clearly it's off from that. Why you would want to be that exposed to risk is beyond me. So just from a pure investment point of view, it makes sense to take on a minority partner. So you got to figure that will happen, especially when you consider the liquidity and short-term, financial needs that they have with this legal situation and everything else. There's going to be, I've heard at least 2 or 3 serious contenders, in terms of people that they might take on to sort of buy in. So I don't think that's going to be an issue. They'll have cash on hand. They're going to get this thing sort of in order. I don't have any doubts about that. Whether they're the principal owners 2-3 years from now, I have absolutely no idea. But I don't necessarily think it's going to be that. I don't think that this is going to have that big of an impact on payroll, especially when you consider that they've got, anywhere from $30 to $60 million coming off the books at the end of the season. So, if they want to re-sign Jose Reyes, they're going to have the money to do it. The question is, do they want him as a player? I think that's going to really be the bigger issue, more than finance. I think it's going to be, do they want Jose Reyes? Is that the kind of guy they want?
Which is probably a tougher question to answer when it comes to money versus talent evaluation. That's a good point. Well, listen, enough of the whole doom and gloom. I think the Mets fans get enough of that out there. You mentioned how Josh Thole is probably one of your favorite players right now. What is it about Thole that you really like, and where do you see him going this year, building off a solid rookie year last year?
I think at best he can be sort of a Jason Kendall type, maybe Paul LaDuca in terms of, offense. I could see him batting second. I love the way he controls the bat, works the count. I think in Citi Field, he's going to be an asset because he can really dunk those balls into the gap. I think he's an interesting hitter, and I just like his approach at the plate. I've always been prone to rooting for catchers. He's homegrown. He's hysterical in interviews because he's like a cliche machine. We talked to him a couple years ago in Binghamton, and he was really new, and yet he already sounded like David Wright. Pretty funny.
Yeah.
But he's just an interesting guy, and it's kind of fun rooting for him. But I like the fact that he has improved so much too. He clearly is working super hard at getting better at catcher. All of the pitchers on the team, on and off the record, will tell you how much better, how much more he's improved. Terry Collins speaks so highly of how he's evolved. So, I like that. And catcher is always kind of a leader position, and people talk about him having the potential to be that.
Yeah, I agree. And as a former player who donned the tools of ignorance, I can share in your appreciation of Josh Thole as a catcher. All right, Matt's going to stay with us through this break. We'll be back to talk more with Matt Cerrone and Mets blog, Turnpike Throw Down, after this.
Check it out now.
One's from North Jersey and one is from South Jersey. Turnpike Throw Down. Turnpike Throw Down. All Noise Radio.